episode 5. What we have decided to do is a weekly episode of the property news and topics with the last week. So we're joined by Zad and Kian, and we've got 5 topics to discuss with you today. The first one, Rightmove rejects final takeover bid from REA Group. The average age of buy-to-let landlord decreasing year on year. Predictions for the autumn budget. Is Airbnb next in Labour sights for tackling the rental crisis? And government's housing targets look unachievable. Are the Tories to blame? Let's start with Rightmove rejects final takeover bid. Kian, what's your thoughts when you saw that story?
The REA Group, Australian property group, owned by News Corp, was making several bids for it a few weeks back, last week, and its fourth and final offer was rebuffed by Rightmove, an offer of over £6 billion, which I personally, not having a stake in understanding how the stock market works, but I see they hold a market cap of £5 billion. So personally, I was thinking, why would they reject such an offer unless they had plans to obviously that their share price to increase beyond that point?
Yeah. Also, the stock went down from Rightmove, if I'm not mistaken, with that.
Following REA Group walking away, I understand that Rightmove's stock went down and REA's went up. Now, I don't understand how.
Yeah,
why would that
basically how it works is Rightmove shares has been in a sideways trend since November 2022. The shares were something between £4.80 to £6 for a couple of years, and then obviously Rupert Murdoch's company comes along and offers them a sum of, I believe it was something like 5 billion something to start with, or around that kind of figure. It got rejected. So obviously when a takeover happens, the shares of the company that's going to be taken over spikes, because obviously they think, well, there's going to be money coming into the company. And so the shares went up it topped around £7.20. And all the time that they were putting second offer, third offer, and obviously fourth and final offer of 6 billion. What the board of Rightmove said that, look, 6 billion, was it $6 billion? I think it was. Or was it £6 billion? I think £6 billion, yes. £6 billion wasn't enough, or the value of the company was worth more than 6 billion. Remember, when it comes to stock market, it's always a projection. It's what they think it's going to be worth in a year, 2 years time, 6 months time, 3 years time, 5 years time. So they believed, this is Rightmove board believed that the shares or the money that were offered was under valuing the shares that they owned. I think they were looking for around the 7 billion pound marker. However, I don't think he ever got there, and they pulled out. So that's why they pulled out, because they thought it's not worth any more than that, and Rightmove board thought their shares or the company was worth more than 6 billion.
But their stock has been plateauing since 2021.
Yes. See, the Rightmove shares, it's a property portal, which means that it's very much dependent on the property market. Now, it is estate agents who are advertising on Rightmove. So when the market is good, when the prices are going up, estate agents, well, there'll be more estate agents coming onto the market, which means that they're going to be advertising more. The revenue for Rightmove goes higher. When times are hard and obviously properties are not selling, estate agents tend to shut down and vanish. That means the advertising revenue goes down, and so the shares of Rightmove comes down. So hence, since obviously in 2022, where the property market has been going sideways and slightly down and sideways, the shares have been going sideways. But you will probably see that as the market picks up, the shares of Rightmove will also pick up as well. So it's very much correlated to one another. The property market very much is correlated, or the shares of Rightmove is very much correlated to the property prices and the estate agents that exist within the industry. Yeah.
With that increase of obviously market activity and
Yeah.
stuff, and obviously Rightmove itself seeing perhaps more activity,
Yeah.
does that mean there's also wiggle room to increase their membership fee to estate agents and listers, etc.?
It does, yes. Hence, they think, Rightmove board thinks that their shares are value. The value of the shares is worth more than what Murdoch is offering,
Yeah.
because they believe the market is now in its last, as far as I believe, its last phase of the upturn. So the shares will increase in value. Hence, it's worth more. Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to the next topic, which is the average age of buy-to-let landlord decreasing year on year. I'll read this. A report by Paragon Bank revealed that the average age of landlord using a buy-to-let mortgage to purchase a property has been steadily decreasing each year, contrary to popular belief.
Yeah.
Zad.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. The Labour government is coming, but they're not being very clear as to the amount of funding that they're willing to allocate to social housing. Now, that's one of the reasons the young buy-to-let entrepreneurs are coming in, thinking, okay, if the government, and we're not talking about this government, we're also talking about the last government that was in power, if they're not being clear as to how much they're going to be allocating to social housing, or if any, then the young entrepreneurs are coming in thinking, okay, fine, we will bridge that gap within the market. So they've decided, okay, and that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that bricks and mortar, it's a brilliant pension fund. Now, obviously, prices are going up, and it always, inflation always erodes into what one's earning. So they think, hold on, if I obviously have a property and let the tenants pay for it over the next 20 years, 25 years, then it would have been paid off. Now I've got 1 or 2 or 3 property being paid off, and that's my pension pot. Inflation and property market now, despite what people think, they think, oh, if inflation comes in, interest rate goes up, and house prices goes down. Yes, it does to a very, very minimal amount, but inflation is very good for properties. As inflation goes up, so does the price of everything, including property. So the young people are banking on the property that they're buying, buy to let. The tenants will pay for it, and in years to come, it's a pension pot for them, rather than having to rely on state pension or put it into a pension pot that may or may not give them what they're looking for when they become a pensioner.
See, I'm not seeing the young investors though. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah.
Let's say for example they go for a standard house. They want to move into a house, a family home. We've discussed it before. You need with the schemes you can get 5% deposit, 10% deposit. You can buy a house with that. Yeah. With a buy to let, they're asking for usually 20% or 25%.
Correct, yeah.
Young people just haven't got that anymore.
When they say young, when Paragon said, look, the age is decreasing, they're talking about a very small amount of age decreasing. They're not talking about youngsters like in their 20s and 30s coming in. No. And the average age was 47 and a half. 47 years old. Forget the half. It was about 47 years old. It is now 42 years old. So what they're saying is that the average age now is 42-ish, and it used to be 47-ish. That's what they're saying, that it's decreased in age. And when you look around, yes, the 25%, when you're looking at a flat, which, we up north, don't forget, we live in the south. South is very, very expensive. But when you're looking at up north, and a flat is, I don't know, 60,000-70,000 pounds for one bed flat. 25% of that is 12 grand. So it's not a lot of money to put down to buy a buy-to-let. You know what I'm saying? So on that basis, if down here you think, well, how, in London, you're talking about £1 million flat, where
Yeah.
they're going to get 250,000. No, that doesn't work, because a 42-year-old don't have
They haven't
quarter of
got
a
that
million
money.
pound
No.
in spare cash. But you go up to, I don't know, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, you go up there, and all of a sudden, for 10, 12, 13,000 pounds, 15,000 pounds, you can pick up a buy to let and rent it out. Now, it doesn't mean that you've got to be living up there. You can be living down south. You can be living down here. You can be working down
And,
here.
and,
And
and
then,
are they being educated enough? Because there's a lot of bad news about property in the news, right? They're always talking about, especially when it comes to investment, all of the rights, the regulations that they're putting in. It's scaring landlords off from being a landlord and looking at other ventures in order to make money and the percentage back rather than property. How can we get people back in to go, look, that's not the case. You can still do that.
look, you can only scare older generation who've been in the buy-to-let for years and years and years. They've had it the way it's been, and they've had it good. Now all these regulation coming in, and they think, whoa, no, I need to get out of this. Yet young people are coming in thinking, well, this is the way it is. They don't know any better. They don't know what it used to be. They know this is the way it is, and they've got to have, if they buy a property, they've got to maintain it. They've got to make sure that it's in a very good condition. They've got to do maintenance on it. They know different. So for that reason, they're coming in, and obviously what we're looking at is south of England, a little bit different because it's more expensive. You start driving up north, and you start looking up north, and it's cheaper. And people, when, for instance, a young 42-year-old who lives in London, or a 45-year-old lives in London, and earns good money, and he's got, I don't know, 15 grand spare, rather than putting it in the bank, he says, I tell you what, I'll do a buy-to-let up in, I don't know, Liverpool, and I'll rent it out, and I'll give it to an agent to look after it for me. They are hands off in every way. So that way they think, well, I've put 15 grand in that property. In 20 years' time, 15 years' time, 25 years' time, the value of the property could be around 80, 90,000 pound, 100,000 pound, and the mortgage has been paid off. And that's my pension pots. I've got 2 or 3 of them. It's better than.
Do you know the average age for someone that's looking to buy their family home
At the moment,
at the
I
moment?
believe it's in their 30s.
Okay, so if that's in their 30s, looking to buy their family home, and then we say that the investors are in the 42s, in the early 40s. Okay, so that gives, let's say, 10 years. If people are saving up, and they're saving up, and they buy their own family home at the age of 30, when did you buy your family home?
25.
Okay, so that was 25. So now it's in the 30s. Okay, so let's say, for example, they buy their family home 30, 35 years old, and they put a lot of money into it, 20% deposit down. They got a mortgage. Can they save enough within the next, say, let's say 10 years in order to go, you know what, now we want to buy more for investment purposes?
Look,
is the time frame long enough for them to want to do? And then if it gets to that certain point, let's say they head into the mid 40s, are they worrying about investment properties then?
Yeah, you see, if you've got 2 incomes, and both incomes are in kind of 40s and 50s, £50,000, and you've got £100,000, and your outgoing is £80,000 a year, for instance, you've got £20,000 to put aside every year. Now that means you can buy one property up north. That's if it. Not everyone is an investor.
Yeah.
See, you get one investor for every 100 or 200 home buyers. So this is where, the whole idea gets skewed up, thinking, well, hold on, people can't afford to buy their own home. How they're doing a buy-to-let? Now, the percentage of landlords are low, but they're there. They're still there. Obviously, through our own business here, we see very little investors walking in through the door and says, I want to buy property to rent out, because it doesn't work in the south because of the taxation, because of
Which usually the dad has been an investor for a long time, and then they're getting their sons and children into it, and daughters into it.
Exactly.
So
but you take that and you go up north, and you can buy yourself a buy to let. No problem.
Yeah, no emotion attachment, nothing involved.
Nothing. Exactly that. So it can work.
Obviously, in the face of tighter profit margins, stricter lending terms, interest rates, harsher legislation, the appeal of bricks and mortar won't go anywhere for the time being.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, all of that put into a pot. A young person or a landlord says, you know what, somebody else will take care of the headache. And in years' time, just like, I've been involved in the property market almost coming up to 30 years, 28, 29 years. And I've always looked after other people's properties, not me personally, but our company has. And after 10 years, 12 years, people think, it's about time I cash in. And our company's still looking after properties that we've had for 20 odd years because they're still renting it out. And so, it is a pension pot for somebody, and it's bricks and mortar at the end of the day. It's not going, it's better than stock market to some people. It's better than digital age that we're in. They think, well, bricks and mortar, everybody needs a home, and I will supply that home. Yeah.
Okay, let's transition. Predictions for the autumn budget. The first autumn budget under the Labour government is poised to take place on October 30th, 2024, which has garnered large-scale speculation from the wider market. Kian?
so far for the autumn budget, obviously, you can speculate. Obviously, you can't predict exactly what's going to happen. Stuff like income tax, VAT, NIC, I believe corporation tax have been ruled out of being increased, but you have things like capital gains tax, I believe some pension and inheritance tax, things like that, start to become more perhaps in the sights, particularly capital gains tax. Obviously, on a historic scale, it's quite low at the moment.
the major topic of discussion, that the capital gains tax. You think it will happen?
I believe so, because to my understanding, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, on a historic scale, the current rate is quite low.
It is, yes. It is pretty low. Yes, to what it used to be many years ago. Obviously, the government needs to raise funds, right? And the only way they're going to raise funds is from the people who have it, basically, rather than the people who haven't got it. So, and as you say, you're absolutely right by saying, we can't predict it. There's a lot of speculation going on. We have to wait till the 30th of October 2024 to actually find out what is it that they're going to increase, what is it that they aren't going to increase. My belief is that, yes, I mean, you mentioned corporation tax. They're not going to increase that. No, because the last government increased it. They took it from 19% to, obviously, depending on the scale basis of how many companies you own and everything else, up to 25%, and depending on the turnover and everything else. So everything being equal, they've increased it. So they're not going to increase it again, not this time round anyway. So you're right. But when it comes to capital gains tax, I think there's certainly room for that to go up. At the moment, it sits around 20% and 24%, or 18% and 24%. They are certainly going to increase that. There's room for that to be increased. There is the other one that they're looking at, which is 50-50. They're going to decrease the inheritance tax allowance. They want to decrease that as well. So basically, you start paying tax from at the moment it's about 315 or around £315,000 or thereabouts. So, I mean, I can't remember exactly, but it's around that figure that's you have an allowance, and after that you start being taxed on inheritance. They want to decrease that to something in the region of zero. From 315 down to zero, whatever that may be, and then so one starts paying tax. That's another way of increasing that. The last government was going to actually scrap it, or either scrap it or take it up to £1 million. Obviously, the Labour is looking at going the other way and tax everyone from pound one. So on that basis,
if you were to break that down, so that's the inheritance tax, right?
Yeah.
So just to break it down for the audience, how would it work? How does it work now? How would it work if it's on zero?
As I say, the figure at the moment, I haven't got the figure in front of me, but let's assume it's about £315,000.
Yeah, we'll just base it on the figure.
Now, if a person passes away and leaves, say, £500,000 worth of property, property shares and cash, altogether it's worth £500,000 for their children. The first £315,000, it's non-taxable. Whatever they earn whatever there is left after that, between 315 to say 500,000, which is 185,000, they get taxed on that, which is 40%.
Right.
So collectively, that's what they pay tax on.
Yeah.
But what the government may be doing, obviously, we don't know until
Speculation.
whether
Yeah.
it's this budget, next budget, or another budget. We don't know. But there is talks about decreasing the inheritance tax allowance to zero, which means if £500,000 is left for you, you pay 40% on the whole lot. It's a speculation, but usually speculation becomes reality at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you put it like that, they've also, I've just seen 15 hours ago, they have announced that they may not look to raise tax on pensions. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that as well. And, obviously, they want to keep...
Why change their mind now?
Yeah, because of, they've already taken the fuel allowance away from them. Pensioners are going to be hurting in order to get them taxed as well. And, obviously, UK have a large aging population, which means the next election, which is only 4 years away, if they hammer the pensioners in every way financially, then they're not going to get their votes. And we tend to live longer, where the average age, many years ago was 60, 65, and then 70, 72, 74. It's kind of creeping up. That means that there is a large number of people living longer, so they need their votes. So they and also they've been pressurized by the union as well, and they've been obviously the current government are under huge pressure by the union in order to let the fuel allowance back to pensioners and everything else. So
you think it's a strategy
it's
rather than in the hearts
it's
of hearts?
it's a strategy. It's definitely a strategy. It's they need to raise money. Remember, any government, whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservative, doesn't matter who's in charge, they need to raise funds in order to pay for the expenses. A government is no different to a company. A company, if they're spending more than they're bringing in, they go bankrupt. The government, they're in a really good position because they keep writing an IOU. They keep printing money. Now, if our company could keep printing money, well, we'll be in debt by quite a lot, but we'll always survive because we keep printing money. Unfortunately, we can't do that, yet the government can for that reason. So it's a strategy.
Yeah. This transition is Airbnb next in Labour's sights for tackling the rental crisis. So Labour have been debating the role of Airbnb in the House of Commons in response to the rental crisis, as many landlords have shifted from traditional AST tenancies to Airbnb short-term lets. You had some notes on that one, Keane?
It's just particularly in the capital, you're seeing a lot of, or less of the capital now after they introduced some measures. But you're seeing a lot of landlords drift away from traditional letting through ASTs and going more towards Airbnb on a short let, service accommodation almost type of let, with rents obviously increasing, stock being low, sales market activity being quite low. It's obviously a great opportunity, pushing up stuff like rents because you can charge more per night on Airbnb. So it's understandable why landlords would do it. The question then becomes, how much is too much, and are Labour looking to put a stop to it?
What can they do to put a stop to it?
So currently in Greater London, as I understand, Airbnb is restricted to only letting for 90 days in a year. But I think that's only in Greater London. They could extend that to the entirety of England. They could introduce a licensing scheme, just like selective or HMO licenses, things like that, that gives a bit more of a cap to it, and caps its affordability, its profitability, puts a bit of a ceiling on it.
Okay, so then what they're doing is they're looking to put let's say they've got to go through licensing in order to, same as a HMO, get a selective license, which is going to cost them money. They need to get the property regulated and up to the right standards. So you can't just stick it on and then just get tenants in straight away. Yeah. So it makes it difficult for them, which is a deterrent in order to not do it. That's their plan.
Because it affects ultimately on a local rental market. I understand if you have so many properties on Airbnb renting obviously more per night, that pushes up the rental price, only making the rental crisis worse.
You're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. You see, as we were discussing, with the new rules and legislation that are coming in when it comes to rental properties, people are thinking, well, hold on a moment. If I rent my property out, let's say for 3 months, 4 months of the year, without having an AST in place and a short tenancy, which gives the tenants a lot of rights, I will do an Airbnb and I will only rent it 4 months. Keep it empty, not obviously in one go, but nights here and nights there. That equates to maybe 4 or 5 months of the year. I don't have to go through all the AST legislations. I'll get more money per night. It probably equates to the same if they rent it out for the whole year, but I don't have the wear and tear of the whole year. I don't have the headache of a whole AST tenancy agreement, and it's easier for me as well. So that's what it does. It takes that family home out of the market for somebody who could use it as could rent it as a family home for 12 months, and they're doing it on a night basis. That is what is taking properties out of circulation into Airbnb and not family home. And the Labour government is looking to do something about that.
Yeah.
I mean, can they? There's always, as you say, they could license it, they could do all sorts to it. But at the end of the day, unless they help the tenants and landlords to make it easier, so that if, for instance, AST at the moment, as far as I'm concerned, is very much in favor of the tenant. Fine. So be it as well. If a tenant is good and is paying their rent and looking after the property, there's no problem there. But once they stop paying rent and the landlord has a mortgage on it, a high mortgage, and then it takes anything up to a year or 2 years to get it to court to evict the tenants, and the landlord's got to keep paying the mortgage, and then all of a sudden it might even get repossessed. They think, well, hold on, Airbnb is a better solution, so we'll go down that route. So the government should be looking at tackling the root, not the problem, but actually the symptoms, but the problem itself, and not the symptoms. So on that basis, I would say that the government, whatever they do, they're going to put a plaster on the wound and go, okay, go away now. It should make it better, but it won't.
Who are the people that are renting these Airbnbs? Are they actually holiday lets, or are they people that need housing but just jump on there?
Who uses Airbnb? Well, some people that want to use the hotels, they don't no longer want to use the hotel because Airbnb is a whole property and not just a room. So that's what they do. And if there's a crowd of them, there's 5 or 6 of them, it works out cheaper to get an Airbnb than it is to go into, let's say, 2 or 3 rooms in a hotel, especially in London or in cities. And also, so it doesn't cater for long-term tenants. Long-term tenants cannot go into Airbnb and stay there for, say, a month or 2. They can't afford it. But what it does do, it takes the property out of the market for family home and into a holiday home. I was reading the news the other day, and it was saying that any Airbnb, any property has an average of 3 nights. 3 nights in a month. That's how it works. 3 nights, but 3 nights pays for a whole month's rent if it was rented for a whole month. Can you imagine that? 3 nights in London pays for a whole month, right? So they think, well, 27 days, 26 days, it's going to be empty. It's fine because I've got the whole month's rent, and they don't have to go through legislation.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, because if it was to compare the two stories, so you've got the Airbnb, which they're trying to make it difficult to do, and obviously get rid of them in the market to make sure there's more family homes for tenants and for families in the rental sector. Yet they may, speculation, be looking to increase the CGT, which then may drive more landlords out of the market. So then would make a shortage of properties again on the rental sector, which then
Absolutely.
puts the prices
Yeah.
up. So
Yeah.
it's a battle there where it's interesting to see which way they're going to take it.
They are making it harder and harder for traditional landlords to stay in the market. As we've discussed before, all sorts of reasons, from the taxation to legislation, and everything else in between. So that really, the government says, we are going to tackle this head on, and we're going to help the tenants with regard to new legislations and everything else. But realistically, what they're really doing is driving people out of the market, which means there's going to be a shortage of properties in the market, which means prices are going to go high. So are they really helping tenants? Well, I don't think so. As I say, it's a plaster on the wound rather than tackle the actual root of the issue. Yeah, problem.
Okay, let's transition. Last story before we wrap up. So the government's housing targets looks unachievable. Are the Tories to blame? So the number of homes and sites gaining planning approval has continued to plummet for yet another quarter. Is Labour's target of 1.5 million houses in 5 years realistic? Well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it realistic? Can they build that many houses in 5 years?
It seems very lofty aspirationally. Obviously, the Conservatives, I think, had a target of 300,000, but they also abolished or outlawed the mandatory housing targets for each local authority. I believe Labour are looking to reintroduce that, so that in theory, each local authority have a certain amount of housing to provide. But in terms of private development and sort of your average developer, not associated or affiliated with the government or anything like that, is less incentivized to develop now due to the lower buyer activity, increased interest rates, things like that. So maybe when the market changes, you'll see a massive uptick. But currently, from where it sits, it does look like a very lofty
If you
target.
think about did they have a plan? You've been in business for a long time. What was their plan? How were they planning to do this?
Look, the only time that they managed to achieve such numbers, to build such numbers of properties, 1.5 million in about 5 years, was after the Second World War. And I wasn't alive then, right? Because the government went on a building spree because obviously houses were bombed and there was a lot of destruction and everyone needed houses. So they went on that. Since then, they've never achieved that target again. They keep setting it, but they don't achieve it. Now, look, every government, whether Labour or Conservative, they understand the law of supply and demand, right? If there isn't the supply and there's a demand, it keeps the house prices at a certain level. Now, let's look at yourselves or our audience. If you have a house that you've got £200,000 equity in it, but you only have £1,000 in the bank, you feel rich because you are equity rich. So you feel rich, but it doesn't matter how much money you got in the bank. You feel rich because you think, if I ever get to that point, I can sell my house and I've got 200 grand. It makes you feel rich. It's a feeling good factor. Now, let's say that the house prices comes down and there is no equity in the property, but you've got £10,000 in the bank. You feel absolutely poor because you think, if I spend that £10,000, I've got no money. So it's a poor feel factor. So on that basis, every government knows that. So what they do, they try to keep that good feel factor up there, because when it comes round to election and everything else, everyone has to have a good feel factor, And if you ask anyone, they like to boast about how much their property is worth and how much equity they've got. And I've lived through 2 recessions and 2 booms. I've had a business through both, and it's amazing how when house prices starts going down, how poor they feel. So when it comes to the target of what the Labour is set, or the Conservative had set before them, they will always set a target. But number one, in order to achieve that target, forget the land. We've got the land. They can always, the government, the councils can say, okay, fine, you know what, release the land for building. Fine. We don't have the manpower to build that many houses because of, we've come out of EU. A lot of workers, that's obviously Eastern Europeans and so forth, that were helping in the building work, they've all gone, almost. And so we don't have the resources to build. Even if we had the allocated land, planning permission, everything in place, we don't have the manpower to build 1.5 million in 5 years. It's impossible. You try to get an extension done in your house and you've got to wait 6 months before the builder comes around and starts doing it. And even that, they'll put you back another month or two because they're still on the old job. So how are you expecting them to build 1.5 million, and we're talking about every kind of contractor from groundwork to the roofer and everything in between. We don't have the manpower only because of what's happened.
They surely must have had a plan to put forward. You can't just, you probably could, but you can't just turn around and say, this is what we're going to do, and everyone rallies around behind it. There has to be some sort of plan that they originally
Yes,
decided.
of course. Yes. How many times a government has done something and they planned it and it just didn't, they didn't have the logistics.
Well, it's happening already.
Yeah. When they plan things, they don't have the logistics. They just plan it. Remember, every government, as far as I'm concerned, every government says the right thing. They have to say the right thing in order to get the votes. But they don't necessarily have to do the right thing. They just have to say the right thing. That's what I've taken away in my years of being on this earth. Every government, not just in this country, but any country, says the right thing, doesn't necessarily have to do the right thing, and people believe what they hear until they don't. And then they vote for somebody else because they believe they're going to do it until they don't.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
There has to be some sort of fact-checking system in place. Surely.
No, there's no fact-checking. No.
They can't.
How can it be? Look, they've said 1.5 million houses. That's the target, and we're going to do it, right? You're a homeowner. Right? You try to get someone to come round and do an extension for you. Do you think they'll be there next month, in 15 days' time? Look, you've got all the money in the world. You have all the money in the world, and you want to build around. You want a good build around. You want to build that your extension will stand the test of time. 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So you go, okay, it's going to take you 6 months. 6 months just to get an extension done. 1.5 million houses? No chance.
No. But that's my issue with that, because let's say if someone comes to me and they've got an idea, you look at the plan. You look at how the plan works. Then obviously I want the plan presented to me in a way that, okay, this is how it works. This is beginning, middle, and end. This is the result. Whether it gets there or not, we don't know. But at least there's a plan that we're working on. So there must be some sort of...
Yeah, have you seen the plan?
I haven't seen the plan, no.
No, because there isn't a plan. There isn't a plan. If there was a plan, they would have put it out to
why is no one requesting for the plan?
Why? Because there isn't, have you ever spoken to a politician? You ask them a question, they answer you something else. So you ask them for a plan, they give you something else. They'll never ever give you what you want. So on that basis, 1.5 million houses, not in a 1.5 million years. Put it this way.
Excellent. All right, we'll leave it on there for today. So that's been brilliant. What we'll do is we're going to be back again next week with new sets of topics to go through. Until then, we'll see you then. That's all for this episode. As always, thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe to see more videos from us in the future. Join us next time where we'll be discussing the biggest developments in the property investment sector and how they may affect you.